Understand the freehold estate means ownership, some type of ownership. Now there's another doctrine we're going to talk about in this video called non-freehold estate or less than freehold. And that is someone who has interest in a piece of property, but they don't have ownership interest, for example. So we'll discuss that later on in this video. But anytime we talk about a freehold estate, we're talking about somebody that has an ownership interest. Not how much of the quality of ownership, but just some ownership, because everybody has a different level of ownership interest or legal interest in a piece of property, may be a better way to say this. Now, there are three subcategories of freehold estate which we need to talk about here. The first one is known as fee simple, or sometimes called fee simple absolute. Those two terms are used interchangeably. So if somebody owns a piece of property, fee simple absolute, that means they have absolute ownership interest. They have all the bundle of rights afforded to them. They have the right to purchase the property, sell the property, mortgage it, lease it. They have the right to its service rights, its subsurface rights, its air rights. They have the right to bequeath it or will it to heirs if they want to. So they have that complete total bundle of rights. Fee simple absolute. The second type is fee simple defeasible. Now the root word here is defease, which means defeat. So what this means is something, it's ownership, it's fee simple. So I own this piece of property, for example, but there's something defeating absolute ownership. Now there's two doctrines under fee simple defeasible. One is determinable. That's the first one. And the second one is condition, what we call condition subsequent. And it's actually fee simple determinable or fee simple to a condition subsequent. And let me explain this. So let's say I own a piece of property and the city wants that piece of property to put a park there. They want my piece of property that I own fee simple absolute. So because I own it fee simple absolute, I'm going to give it to the city, but I'm going to put a requirement on that piece of property. And we're going to actually put it into the deed restriction of the deed when I transfer title meaning ownership, over to the city. All right, so I'm actually going to sign a deed. I'm going to transfer title over to the city, but in that deed restriction, it says that it can only be used as a park. And so if it's used for anything else, then it's going to be passed on, the ownership's going to be passed on to someone else. So I own the property fee simple absolute. I transfer title over to the city. Now the city owns it. They have fee simple title, but they have fee simple defeasible because there is something defeating absolute title. And that is, I put a condition on the city's ownership of my former property, meaning that it has to remain a park. Now these two doctrines, fee simple determinable and fee simple to a condition subsequent, means that under a determinable situation, I transfer the property to the city to be a park. And let's say it's a park for the next 20 years. But at the point that it stops being a park, the city stops using it as a park, then the ownership automatically transfers to what we call the Remainderman, automatically transfers to somebody that I pre-designated as the heir to this property. So maybe I put in the deed, in the deed restriction, I put in there that the city can own it for as long as they want, but at the point that it stops being a park, it automatically, determinable, it automatically transfers to the Catholic Church, for example. Now a condition subsequent would be a defeating moment where I would say, listen, the city can have this, they own it, but there is a deed restriction that says that it must remain a park. Now, if it stops remaining a park, then the city still owns it until someone, me or someone of my heirs or my estate goes in and says, or anybody actually, and says, files an action against it saying, no, it's no longer a park, so this needs to revert to whoever, the church or whatever the case may be. So remember, fee simple defeasible means something is defeating absolute ownership, and then we categorize fee simple defeasible by determinable or conditions subsequent. The third part is a life estate, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on this because life estates are cool. So let's take a look at the life estate part of this. All right, let's talk about a life estate. Here's what a life estate is. And the key here is life estate. So, meaning someone has legal interest in a piece of property for their life or the remaining time of their life. That's what a life estate is. So let's say that I own this property. Maybe it's a rental property. And my mom is 70 years old and I say, Mom, here's the thing. I'm going to give you this house for the rest of your life. But at the point that you die, then I'm going to transfer the title on to somebody else. So I transfer title to Mom. So Mom now owns it. All right, Mom owns it. Mom owns it for the rest of her life. So we transfer title. And remember, title in real estate means ownership. But I'm going to pre-designate who gets the property after Mom dies. So when Mom dies, then I'm going to transfer the property over to my brother Tom. All right, so Tom is known as the Remainderman. He's the Remainderman. Now, there is a future ownership interest that belongs to Tom because we know Mom isn't going to live forever. So we know that at some point Tom or his estate is going to own this property when Mom dies. That interest, that future legal interest in the property is known as reversionary interest. Now, I don't have to, when I transfer title to Mom, I don't have to designate Tom or anybody else to be the new owner. I could actually say, well, after Mom dies, it comes back to me. In that case, I'm the Remainderman, and the reversionary interest, that future ownership interest, that belongs to me. But it's still called reversionary interest. You need to know these two key terms because there's a good chance that if you draw a test question or a particular test that's heavy on life estates, those two key terms are going to be in there. All right, so once again, I own the house, I transfer the title to Mom, and Mom's the owner. Mom, now, if somebody owns a piece of property, what can they do? Well, here's the interesting thing. Mom can take out a mortgage on it. Now, I bet you're saying, well, okay, how can Mom take out a mortgage on it? Because what happens if Mom dies? There's the technical side of it that you need to know for the test, and then there's the practical side. Quite honestly, I think it would be very difficult from all practical intents purposes for Mom to get a mortgage, but it's legally possible. Mom can actually sell the property. She can sell the property. She can lease the property out. There's only two things that Mom can't do with that property. Mom can't waste the property, which means destroy it. So if I own this property fee simple absolute, and I want to burn the house down or tear it down because I want a vacant lot, I can do that as long as local zoning permits it. But Mom can't do that. She can't waste the property. That's what it's called. And she cannot will it or what we call bequeath it to any of her heirs or anyone else. Interestingly enough, Mom, if she wants to, Mom can sell the property. So let's say Mom sells the property to Sally. Sally now owns it. Now what's going to happen is as soon as Mom dies, then Sally's done. Her ownership automatically reverts to Tom, who's the Remainderman. So it's kind of cool how this all plays out. I have actually seen this scenario. I've never seen the mortgage scenario, but I have seen the scenario where mom does sell it to somebody. Now here's the thing. I transfer title to mom as a life estate. All right? That's a freehold estate because it's ownership, but mom owns it for the rest of her life. Remember, life is the key here. Now once mom dies, and that property goes to Tom, who's the remainderman. Tom now owns it fee simple title. And if he owns it fee simple absolute and he has fee simple title, then he has all the rights, all the bundle of rights to do whatever he wants. Now he can sell it, he can lease it, he can mortgage it, he can farm it, he has rights to the mineral rights, the air rights, and all of that. The entire bundle of rights that's offered private ownership. Someone who owns title fee simple absolute. So that's a life estate. The next thing I want to talk about is non-freehold estate, or sometimes called less than freehold estate. Two terms, two phrases you have to know because the test can use them interchangeably. We know that a freehold estate deals with ownership interest. Non-freehold estate is non-ownership interest. There is a legal interest in the property and they have rights, but there's no ownership interest. And we see this with the landlord-tenant relationship. So when you own a piece of property, freehold, fee simple absolute, you know that you can lease the property. That's part of your bundle of rights. And so there's two interests that someone has when they own a piece of property. They have the ownership or the title interest, meaning they own the property, and there's a separate legally distinct right called the right of possession or the legal right of possession. So if I own the piece of property and I'm going to lease it out to you, then I'm going to retain the ownership interest, but if I sign a year lease or month to month or whatever, I'm going to transfer the legal right of possession to you. So you have a legal interest in this piece of property. But we have to call it something because the lawyer said we have to. So there's legal names for this. So in that estate, like what we call it is the landlord has what we call a lease fee interest, FEE. And the tenant has a hold interest. Okay, so when we have a non-freehold estate or less than freehold estate, remember the landlord-tenant situation, both parties have a legal interest in the property. And the tenant has the leasehold interest and the landlord has the leased fee interest. That's the legal names for this relationship here regarding their interest. Now, here's how I used to remember this when I was a student. The landlord's interest in that landlord-tenant relationship is called leased fee. The landlord charges a fee called rent in exchange for giving up the legal right of possession. The tenant, if they don't pay the fee called rent, they're going to they're going to hold the property hostage until eviction. So that's just a little tool that I use to remember this situation. Non-freehold means non-ownership. We see it in the landlord-tenant relationship, and we have to give legal names to the interest. The tenant's interest is a leasehold interest, and the landlord's interest in the property is called leased fee.